temperatures are a certain range of moisture occurs. If the wrong kind of climate is there, that lichen won't live there. These bougainvillea only live where a certain amount of rain falls at certain times of year at certain temperatures. On the other hand, any place in the world where that climate occurs, the bougainvillea probably live there. It doesn't have to be the dominant plants of the region, although we tend to think of it, but climatologists can focus on individual types of moss or individual types of grass and really can stress why does this plant live here, and that will tell us what kind of climate the region has. This business of the Köppen system was actually a really big realization in the field of climatology, and it's a great system for classifying climates, but there are some problems with it. First of all, what do you do over water? No plants live over water. There are no forests over the ocean. If you want to know something about the climate over the ocean, then the Köppen system is not going to work for you. If you need to know how warm is it over this stretch of the ocean, you'll have to find another system. Another important problem with the Köppen system is that plants do thrive or fail for reasons that don't involve climate. Things like diseases and bugs and fires that don't necessarily have anything to do with the climate. So you have to always watch out for those kind of effects when you're trying to figure out why a plant thrives or failed in this region. Another important problem with the Köppen system is just because a plant doesn't live in a given region doesn't mean it's obvious as to whether it's the precipitation or whether it's the temperature that limits where that plant is. For example, palm trees don't live in Nebraska. Do palm trees not live in Nebraska because it's too cold in Nebraska? Do palm trees not live in Nebraska because it's too dry in Nebraska? It's not immediately obvious from the Köppen system why plants do or don't live in their individual region. We just trust that they don't for good reasons. And finally, the Köppen system is not readily quantified. As scientists, we really would like to be able to assign numbers. We'd like to say that this is a climate that supports some percentage of palm trees or some percentage of cacti, but it's not really the way Köppen system works. It's more a way of labeling regions, and that does tend to be a bit of a problem for science. But based on this idea, Köppen was able to come up with an elaborate system of classifying the climates of different areas of the world. And it's quite a complex scheme. There are many different types of climates in his scheme, and subtypes and sub-subtypes. It's a very elaborate scheme. But we're going to now focus on the 6 main types of climates in the Köppen system. The first climate type that we're going to consider based on the Köppen system is the type A climates, which are the tropical moist climates. The colored areas on this map illustrate where tropical moist climates occur, type A climates. You can see they occur in a broad band centered on the equator. They're across South America, across tropical Africa, they're across the southern part of the Indian Peninsula, the Indian subcontinent, and all across the Indonesia and all across northern Australia. In all of the tropical moist climate, there is far more precipitation than evaporation, and precipitation is not really a limiting factor for the vegetation that lives in this area. What kind of biomes would we expect to find in a tropical moist climate or a type A climate? In these climates there's no real winter, and so we tend to things like jungles and rainforests. Rainforests are generally evergreen, they never lose their leaves. They are generally dense forests. Typically they're broadleaf trees. They don't generally don't generally have pine trees in a jungle or in a rainforest. And these kind of rainforests are prevalent throughout, say, Brazil, the coasts of West Africa, Central Africa, parts of India, and most of the Indonesian island archipelago. True jungles and true rainforests aren't the only type of biome, though, that we would expect to find in a type A climate. Monsoon climates also count as a type of type A climate. Monsoons are generally going to occur in places where there's lots of precipitation during the summer, which is the wet season, and then a dry season follows. But the dry season isn't really all that severe because there's been so much precipitation during the wet season. Places with monsoon climates would be places like India or West Africa. Also, there are the so-called tropical wet and dry climates. You wouldn't need to know that term, but it's another example of a type of climate that you would expect to have a type A climate. These are tall grass prairies. A good word for this type of biome is savanna. Savannas are an example of a type A climate. They're tall grass prairies, usually dominated by large mammals like gazelles and elephants and giraffes. If you're picturing that kind of environment, then you're picturing a savanna. In fact, just to if you're thinking about a type A climate, you want to be thinking about a type of environment where an elephant could live. That's kind of a good way to remember the type A climates. Type A climates typically are jungles and savannas where elephants can live, and parts of the world where elephants can live. The second type of climate in the Köppen system are the type B climates, or the dry climates. These climates, which are colored in on this map, occupy more land area than any other climate type. They get very little precipitation at any time of year. Now, these climates don't necessarily just depend on the precipitation, but also on temperature or evaporation rate, because obviously the hotter it is, the more evaporation you have. For example, a mere 14 inches of rain will support a best sparse vegetation in a hot climate, but 14 inches of rain will support a conifer forest in northern Canada. So you need to consider both the evaporation rate and the amount of rain they receive when you're going to classify something as a dry climate. When you think of the dry climates, you're of course thinking about deserts. And true deserts are an important type of Class B climate, or Type B climate. These deserts might be they might be Saudi Arabia, maybe the outback of Australia, and so on, maybe Arizona. And that is an important type of Class B or Type B climate. However, another important type of Type B climate are steppes. Steppes are short grass prairies. And these kind of prairies are very dry, very short grasses, very little precipitation throughout the course of the year. And this is different from a savanna, which is a Type A climate, which is a very lush type of vegetation. Are found in much of the western part of North America, and also across much of Central Asia, and along the fringes of the Sahara Desert. The steppes are colored in blue on this map. The areas colored in this map represent Type C climates in the Köppen system. Type C climates go by the name moist subtropical mid-latitude climates. And these are going to be humid climates with plenty of precipitation around the year, and they have very mild winters. They still have a distinct summer and a distinct winter, but the winter is really quite mild. In the United States, when you think about a Type C climate, your first thought should be the southeast United States. Think swamps, think the South, think Arkansas, think Florida. These are all going to be examples of so-called humid subtropical climates. They're going to have a very muggy climate in the summer, and they're going to have very mild winters. It may snow, but very rarely will there be heavy snow. And yeah, just think Florida, think Arkansas, think Georgia, and you have a Type C climate. There are other types of Type C climates as well. Like another example would be the climate of Western Europe, which is in general a very long, cool summers and very mild. The areas in pink on this map are where we have the so-called Mediterranean climates, which are another type of Type C climate, and they tend to have a warm summer and a cool, wet winter. And this is, for example, California and the area around the Mediterranean Sea. These places have very mild winters, but they're somewhat moist in the winter. Whereas in the summer, it's generally fair conditions and sunny and mild all summer long. Think the French Riviera, think Italy, etc. They tend to have rather exotic types of vegetation, such as these strange little succulents. Because these kind of vegetation conserve water greatly during the dry part of the year. But these are all nice examples of Type C climates: mild winters, moist summers. I'm sorry, moist climates with mild winters. Köppen's Type D climates are indicated on this map by being colored in. The Type D climates are the so-called moist continental climates. They're going to have very cold winters with summer seasons. There's going to be plenty of